So, welcome to another episode of One Health Talks. That's what it's called. And we have with us Gerald Midgley, who is going to explain his background and how that links to systems thinking and understanding or seeing things as a system. So, welcome, Gerald.
Thank you. So, how did I get into systems initially? I did a psychology degree, and I found it really frustrating because what you learn, or what you used to learn back then in 79 to 82, when I did that degree, was a list of maybe 2,000 names of authors and dates and little experiments that they did, and nothing joined up. And the arbitrary disciplinary boundaries were really frustrating. Yeah. So I think the worst example of that was having a lecture series on psychopathy. And it went on for a whole semester. And then 10 minutes from the end of the last session, the guy said, well, you've heard all the psychological theories. There are an equal number of sociological theories, but you don't want to know those, do you? and I mean, everybody just said, oh, and I was sitting there thinking, oh, that's just outrageous. So I after university, I went in, set up my own research business, and ran that for 4 years. And and I was looking always for approaches that would not have those kinds of disciplinary boundaries. And I was also joining up quantitative and qualitative methods, but I was losing a lot of project bids because people said that that's not valid to join up quantitative and qualitative. So I just, being an arrogant person in their mid-20s at the time, I just said to myself, there's nothing wrong with what I'm doing. What's wrong is the philosophy of science that's telling people that they shouldn't be doing this. So I need to do a PhD and actually work out the rationale on on mixing methods. And I got some advice to approach City University to do a PhD. So I phoned up and I asked to be put through to the psychology department. And they put me through to the wrong number. They put me through to the systems department. Oh, yeah. So I was talking to this guy who just happened to be in a similar sort of research area for about 10 minutes before we realized I was with the wrong department. He said, "No, don't go. I'm interested in this PhD."
Oh, wow.
So I ended up doing my PhD in systems and realized as soon as I looked at my first book in systems, because he said, go and read this book, I said, this answers the problem of the disciplinary boundaries too, because there are systems ideas that transcend boundaries. So I kind of got sold on it through that. And then got really lucky because my PhD supervisor, Bob Flood, got a new job as a professor of systems at Hull University, and he brought myself and my now wife over with him to Hull. So I ended up as Bob Flood's research assistant in Hull. Then they set up the Centre for Systems Studies. I was running the community development wing of the Centre for Systems Studies for about 6 years until Bob left, and then I took over as director of the centre. So that was all about applying systems thinking to community development and continuing the more philosophical and theoretical and methodological research alongside. Then I got really frustrated, wanted to do environmental work, but there was nobody in our group who were really into that. So I ended up moving to New Zealand for 7 years, worked in a government research institute in New Zealand, and got involved in national and regional level projects on major environmental issues like water shortages and major conflicts over water resources and things. And then back to Hull again in 2010, where I've been professor of systems thinking ever since.
Wow, that's incredible. It's mind-blowing how luck kind of played a role in getting to where you're at right now. And then you created something incredible out of that. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And why then is systems thinking important to you?
Because contrary to what a lot of people who come to systems thinking for the first time think it's going to be about, I think what people think it's going to be about is giving them some kind of really comprehensive analysis. And it just isn't about that. If anything, it's dealing with the inevitable lack of comprehensiveness because of the complexity that you're going to be facing, and giving you some approaches and ways of thinking that help you deal with that situation. So how you explore boundaries, for example, how you explore the value judgments that go into setting boundaries, how you explore interrelatedness, different perspectives that people have, how you can understand that there are properties in the system that emerge from the whole and not from just one part. These sorts of thinking skills are really useful. And then you have the methodologies as well, which enable you to really practice those systems thinking skills more effectively and allow you to do that in dialogue as well as individually. So really the thinking part of systems thinking is not a naive notion of thinking. It's not just something that goes on in your head. It's something that goes on with other people as well.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. And then how do you now practice systems thinking I'll leave that as open as possible.
Well, actually, in several different ways. So I'm doing projects for sure on systems thinking. And so at the moment, I've got 3 projects going on, 4 projects going on, sorry. I'm working on sustainability, systems thinking and sustainability with a Swedish university. I've got a visiting position there, and I'm helping build capacity in their team. So it's kind of mentoring a new systems group in Sweden. I'm working on a public health project, which is around community development for public health, focusing on physical activity in a disadvantaged community. I'm doing a project in the United States, looking at antimicrobial resistance and working with the agricultural sector. So we're actually working with beef and dairy industries, but also public health and consumer advocates to look at what the potential is for voluntary stewardship of antibiotics. And the other project has just escaped me. The other project is for Department of Health and Social Care in the UK, looking at how you can prevent people with autism and learning difficulties ending up inappropriately in mental health facilities, and how they can have alternative treatments in the community. So those are the 4 I'm doing at the moment. Those are fairly typical of the kinds of projects that I do. I'm also supervising PhD students. So I've got 10 PhD students, but they're nearly all part-time. I think I've only got 1 full-timer now. And so they're working in consultancy or other jobs, and they're doing their PhDs alongside. I've got one in a government ministry, for example. So he's using the projects that he gets put on as part of his job to apply the systems thinking. And the third way, I guess, is in my own life to an extent, because the more you internalize this way of thinking, the more you actually see your own identity and your own way of being in a more relational way. And one of the things that I often say to people, because they complain that one of my big complaints is that if you want to be a doctor or an engineer, you're probably going to do something between 5 and 10 years of university training, and then you're supposed to learn systems thinking in a weekend course, and it is totally ridiculous.
Yes.
So I say this is really a life project. You can only start from where you are, but you can build your capabilities as you go. And your next project, think about what's the one new approach that you might learn for that, and then begin to not only build new approaches, but build your capabilities to think about how you design the approaches, because that's really where the systems thinking comes in. It doesn't come in. You can slavishly follow a method and not be systems thinking, thinking systemically at all. But the systems thinking comes in when you really understand how to explore a context and design a bespoke method that is going to meet that context. Yeah. And that might involve drawing upon any bits and pieces from other methodologies. It's not something that's pure and as if one methodology can answer all problems. Yeah.
Thanks for that. I really enjoyed how it was said, because it really reflected on how I'm actually seeing systems thinking now. I'm really a debutant in the whole system thinking department, and I am trying to really see how I can reflect that in the way that I structure the things that I want to put out, the next projects that I'm on. I'm trying to think about it in that way, but I don't really have the methodologies down. I'm still reading and I'm still trying to learn. But I think, as you said, learning by doing is also a good way to test out some things and see how your reach and understanding of system thinking grows based on the experiences you'll be having, little by little.
Absolutely. I mean, this is not a fault of the way systems thinkers write. It's just a fact that there's a big difference between writing about a methodology where there might be generic steps and techniques that you can explain, and actually implementing it in a workshop session with a group, because you've got all the group dynamics, all those human relations side of things. That everything you're engaging with has meaning at multiple levels, because you when somebody says something in a workshop, they're simultaneously talking about the content of what they're saying, and they're also making a communication to other people about their relationships. Are they contradicting somebody else, or are they supporting them? Are they amplifying what they're saying? So you have to be really aware of that, and that. So there's a whole dimension of experience beyond what's written. And I really don't think you can be a competent systems thinker just by reading. You've got to do it as well.
Yeah.